If you make EDM music, or if you make 2hollis type beats or 2hollis inspired music, you know that basses play a really big role in this kind of music. You could say that they are the most important part of the beat, and it sucks. Basses were the part of production I struggled the most when I started making EDM, when I started making 2hollis type beats. There was just always something missing, and I couldn't get the basses 100% right. And after many tries, I thankfully learned how to make them. I finally figured it out. I learned how to make good basses that hit right and cut to the mix. And today, in this video, I'm gonna try to show you some of my secrets, some of my techniques that I use to make basses. So, if you make EDM or 2hollis, Nate Sib inspired music, you might wanna watch this one. And the last thing before we jump into FL Studio, you can check out the description. There are my kits linked below, and you can check out the basses in these kits after I show you what I want to show you. So yeah, without any further ado, let's jump to FL. Okay, and the first bass I wanted to show you is this kind of longer Reese bass, noisy bass that is inspired by 2hollis and Nate Sib's song Afraid. So let's first listen how the bass sounds with drums and in context of a beat. And yeah, as you can hear, it's quite noisy, and it also has like a top note added to it. And yeah, let's break it down. The Serum preset now. This is just it. It's two saways, and one is pitched 7 semitones up from the first one. And we also have an LFO here that modulates the level of the noise. I used pink noise just because it sounds good with this bass. We also have this filter with drive and fat turned a bit up to give it more character, make it more harsh and noisy, because that's what I was going for. And I've also added a sub oscillator that plays a normal sine wave, and I do that for most of my basses because for some reason sometimes in Serum the basses like don't sound bassy enough if you don't turn on the sub oscillator, even if your oscillator A or B play even lower than the sub. I don't know why, but it's always good to have a sub oscillator turned on in Serum. And also, while we are in this part of Serum, I also turned on mono and portamento to make the notes slide when you play two notes at the same time. And now let's check out the FX panel, because there's a lot going on here. So the first plugin in chain is the Hyper Dimension plugin, and actually I only use the dimension part to give it more space. Second effect in the rack is distortion, but with linear fold distortion, which is really unique. This is what gives this bass a certain character. Then we have some flanger to make it more spacey as well, just like the dimension plugin. A little bit of plate reverb, but the mix is at like 8%, so it's barely noticeable. Some equalizer to boost the pink noise and also to boost the sub frequencies a bit. And then just a simple compression, and that's it. It's a pretty simple preset, but you can use it for many kinds of beats, and it's actually really good for like simple beats with just one melodic element or something, because it plays a perfect fifth, so the bass acts kinda like a chord, so you can play just bass and some pluck and you're gonna have a full melody. You don't have to add anything else. So yeah, it's really good for songs with simple melodies like Afraid is, which this bass is based on. Let's listen to the bass in context again. Okay, and for the second bass that I wanna break down, we're gonna use the same beat I showed you in the last video. So the bit with two parts, the trap one and EDM one. And I'm gonna show you the bass I used for the EDM part because it's actually quite cool. So as you can see here, this is just a one shot from the pack, from the Star multi-kit that's linked in the description. But I wanna break down how I actually made this one shot. So to make this bass, we are actually going to need two Spire instances. The first one, the bottom part, is this preset that is just native Spire preset that I kinda tweaked to make it sound good with the other part. And those are the three oscillators that we're using in this preset. The first one is this kinda distorted sine wave. Second one is just basic sine waves and it just acts as a sub. The third one is this weird brass wave from Spire that gives the bottom this character. This is how it sounds on its own without the top part. And I'm gonna slowly turn on the oscillator 3 and you're gonna hear a difference. So the envelope looks like a plug. We have very short attack and short decay, and we have some release, but it's also not a long release. For the effects here, nothing complicated, no delay, no reverb, because it's the bottom part of the bass, so we don't want any of that. Some boost of like the low mid frequencies here to really make this third oscillator cut through the mix. We also have a bit of distortion here, and yeah, that's just it. And now let's listen to the top part of the bass. So we have more distortion here. We have three weird wavetables from Spire that I assume are just like sampled instruments converted into wavetables. The first one is this vocal 2, and it adds this nice click to the bass. Oscillator 2 is just more of that click and more transient. It's also pitched up 7 semitones, so a perfect fifth. And the oscillator 4, so the third one I used for this part, is this weird distorted wave, and it just adds grit to this bass. And I'm gonna add this plugin to my channel rack. I'm gonna select the two Spire plugins I loaded, and I'm gonna click Set Children, and this allows me to play two plugins at once. So as you can hear, we have the bottom part and top part playing at the same time. So this is really useful if you are layering sounds. So if you didn't know about that, you can drop me a like or something. And yeah, this is all for this bass. Let's listen to how it sounds in context with the melody and drums. So yeah, this one cuts through the mix better than the first bass, and it's better for like this rhythmic patterns that I often use in my EDM 2hollis type beats. And the third bass I made for my previous pack, so Flash multi-kit, and I actually couldn't find any recent beat that I made using this bass. So I'm just gonna show you it with this beat, and the third bass I'm talking about sounds like this. And I think I mentioned it in some other video, but now we're gonna do a deep dive into this preset because it's one of the coolest presets I made. So the main part of the bass is pretty simple. We have the analog BD sine wave and a bass plug wave from Serum 2 alongside some sub oscillator and white noise. Also, obviously, as you could hear, it's a plucky bass, so we have really short envelope modulating a filter, and we have this MG Dirty filter that adds a nice character. If you haven't tried it yet, you can try using it on basses, and you can try turning up the pain knob, and you're gonna get really good results. So yeah, it seems like a normal bass until you look at oscillator C. So oscillator C has a clap loaded on it, and I distorted the hell out of this clap, and it sounds so nice because it adds the little transient in the bass. And I remember that when I made this bass, I was using it for every beat I was making, and yeah, it sounds kinda cool. For the effects part, we have tube distortion, so not as interesting as the distortion in previous preset, but yeah, we have some tube distortion that you can change here with this macro. Utility to make sure the sub plays in mono, because it was an issue with this bass. some baud, but it's not important at all. Multiband compressor to really emphasize the clap part of the bass. And we have another distortion to really squash everything together. And let's listen to how it sounds in context now. And yeah, the first two basses you can get in Star multi-kit I made with JJ. It's linked in the description. The third one, so the clap bass, you can get in my previous kit, Flash multi-kit. It's also probably linked in the description, and if it's not there, you can always check out Skeleton Store and see our range of many different electronic underground kits. So yeah, I hope you learned something interesting about sound design or about basses in this video, and if you wanna check out some of my presets, they are all on Skeleton Store. I highly recommend you check out our kits. And this would be all for today's video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.